Good evening, everyone. So, Venerable Children is traveling, and so for the next few weeks, we'll be doing some review of the Gomchen Lamrim. And so let's begin with our motivation first. And so we've all attained a precious human rebirth with a precious human body, which allows for the greatest possible spiritual progress. We really wouldn't have a better opportunity for achieving enlightenment than we have now as human beings. Since there's no better working basis than what we have now, it's important that we know all the procedures for making the best use of it. The most excellent way to make spiritual progress is to develop within ourselves more and more a kind and warm heart. On the basis of a warm heart, we then go on to develop the dedicated heart of a bodhicitta aim, the wish to achieve enlightenment, the wish to eliminate all our shortcomings and to achieve our fullest potential, in order to be able to benefit everyone as best as is possible. When we dedicate our heart to others and achieve enlightenment, that's the best use we can make of our precious human rebirth. So it's important to try to work for some longer-lasting, mentally based happiness. The physical happiness we may achieve in this lifetime is something that is not long-lasting. If we want lasting happiness, we must consider our future lives. And when we take that into account, we can work for truly long-lasting happiness. Working toward achieving happiness in future lifetimes fulfills the definition of what is meant to be a spiritual person, involved in a spiritual practice of Dharma. If we're limited to the concerns of this lifetime, things that are impermanent, then we are merely a worldly material person. But if we begin to address the concerns of future lives, we become a spiritual person. And so tonight, let's keep this very vast view in mind as we begin the review of the Gomchen Lamrim. So tonight I'm going to do some selected review on the first three teachings. The first one was the greatness of the teacher and the teachings, and then how to listen and explain the teachings, and then the qualities of a spiritual mentor and disciples. And so first I thought maybe to give a little bit of general information about the Lamrim, since it's so important and so powerful. I found some writing about from Pabonka Rinpoche in his advice on how to meditate on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And he explains the importance of analytic meditation. And in his introduction he writes, "A mere semblance of listening, study, and understanding can generate both strong faith and listening wisdom about the topics of leisure and fortune, impermanence, aversion, and so on. If they have not arisen through analytic meditation, such wisdom is nothing more than right judgment. And so eventually it fades away. You run a risk by failing to generate soon after this wisdom the genuine experience that comes from reflection. Many persons become insensitive to Dharma when they allow the former awareness to fade away before they can generate the latter. So apply yourself to the profound method for avoiding insensitivity to Dharma. This is achieved through the blessings of your Guru's speech, along with your own efforts to listen to Dharma properly. So however much So however much understanding you gain through hearing Dharma, it's vital to generate soon afterward the understanding that comes from reflection. How then do you generate the understanding that comes from reflections? Analytic meditation is the exercise of eliciting experiential realizations. By contemplating our particular meditation topic from every standpoint and in every way, using scriptural citations and sharp reasoning. So I thought that quote from Pabanka Rinpoche was quite nice to remind us that we can, hear all the teachings and read all the books, but if we don't analyze what we've heard, if we don't bring it into our experience, it's not really going to have a great effect. And as he says, actually, we kind of get insensitive to Dharma. It kind of loses its potency, I think. And so when we think about the Lamrim, it's really presenting a way to access and integrate all the basic teachings of the Buddha. Since none of the teachings were written down until several centuries after the Buddha's parinirvana, and then when they did write down the teachings, the sutras, they didn't arrange them in a particular order. And so to sit down with all the sutras and try to make sense of it and think about what would I practice first would be very, very difficult. And so really, centuries later, the great Indian Buddhist masters then wrote commentaries and tried to organize and put the material together, which was so helpful. And so the one that we know about really is Atisha so well, that he really is the one that made the prototype of the Lamrim. And this was back in the 11th century. And so he organized, when you just think about it, it's kind of mind-boggling to think about taking all of those scriptures and figuring out how to put them in a graded path so that we could actually work through them and attain awakening. Doesn't that boggle your mind? That just slays me. What a mind he had. What a mind he had. And so from all the material the Buddha taught, if we use the Lamrim, then we can discover, what is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, etc. And this is what the Lamrim presents to us. It's in a very graded order. And then, of course, after Atisha, many other great masters elaborated on the versions. When Venerable first started teaching this, she started talking about the 3 capacities of beings, and each of these 3 capacities of beings has a particular motivation. And then you do analytic meditations to generate that motivation in order to actualize it. So it's set up in such a way that if you keep doing it, there's no way that you can't continue to progress on the path. And that also is very beautiful. So we can talk about the 3 motivations in common with the initial, middle, and the high capacity being. So what are those? What's the first one? Attain upper rebirth, yeah, a higher rebirth. What's the middle capacity one?
Liberation from samsara.
Or nirvana, yeah. Freedom from the afflictive obscurations. And then the high one?
Buddhahood.
Full Buddhahood, yeah. And we can see that these build upon one another. We go from the initial, medium to the advanced. And so I just lost my text because I touched my screen. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Okay. So to cultivate each motivation, you do the different meditations, and then that makes the motivation arise in the mind, and then you get some understanding, and you keep doing it over and over again, and your understanding gets deeper, deeper, deeper. And so like Venerable talked about, she said Lam, what that means is path. And so it's talking about states of mind that act as a path to reach a goal. And Rim means stages of that so graded stages. So we're speaking about various states of mind, levels of mind that we need to develop in a certain order. And they're a path because they lead to a goal. And so really when you think about it, what's graded here, what this sequence is, really is about motivation. I think it's really important to continue to remember that everything we do is really based on motivation. And according to really how it's presented in Buddhism, motivation is a two-part thing. So motivation is connected to a reason we want to reach a certain goal or aim that we have. And then plus, with that is an emotion that drives us to reach that goal. And so we know that when we just think about our life, we have a goal to, get an education. And along with that, there's some emotion about that, some feeling about that. You put those two together, and then that can propel you forward. And so the same, of course, is true with spiritual motivations. And so Venerable Chödrön began the text by reminding us to generate a good motivation for studying this text. And if we really think about this deeply, to think about the entire path is laid out in a very logical order for us. And again, if we just continue to work with it, we will become awakened. I mean, I don't know, there's not a better deal around. It's really good. It's really good. Yeah. So the Gomchen Lamrim, a little bit about that, just a little review. So it was written by Gomchen Nawang Dragpa. I'm probably slaughtering the pronunciation, but so Gomchen means great meditator. And he was a native of the Song province, which is in central Tibet, around where Lhasa is located. He was the disciple of another master called Je Lodro Tempa, who was the sixth Ganden Tripa. And the Ganden Tripas started with Je Tsongkhapa, and so really it's the throne holder or the head of Ganden Monastery. So Je Lodro Tempa, he was the sixth. And so this Lamrim text is a condensation of Lama Tsongkhapa's middle-length Lamrim, and it's been described as the key to unlock that text. And so like what Venerable said, she said that she would teach this text, and we would, because it's in more detail than the Easy Path was, and we'll get more familiar with it, and then she'll teach the middle-length Lamrim. So it's kind of preparing our minds for more detailed Lamrim. And so when we get into the text, then he starts out with homage to the perfect gurus. So, this is the familiar homage that all texts start with. And so this text deals with the sutra path. So transmitted teachings and then the transmitted teachings is the scriptural teachings, the words. And the realized Dharma is the realizations we gain from meditating and practicing. So we need both to be passed down. So the first verse, homage to the perfect gurus. Through his superior practice of the three instructions and of the transmitted and realized teaching, he is able to uphold the conqueror's thinking exactly, Abiding by this great master, I shall practice the stages of the path of Sutra and Tantra. And so when he talks about his, the great master, he's talking about his teacher. And then the first point is the greatness of the author. And so the greatness of the teacher here refers to Atisha. And he was explicitly invited to revive and restore the Buddha Dharma in Tibet because it was very much degenerated with all sorts of misconceptions, both deliberate and also out of ignorance. And so the Tibetan ruler at that time asked for a teaching that would be beneficial for the survival of the Buddha Dharma as a whole. And according to one source, he made the following plea. Instead of some so-called profound or amazing teachings, pray sustain us in the land of Tibet with the teachings of karma and its effects. To which Atisha replied with great delight. The law of karma and its effects alone is the most profound teaching. Then he apparently recounted several tales of how some of even the advanced yogis who had experienced visions of their meditation deities suffered grave consequences as a result of defying the law of karma. And so in this way, Atisha came to be known, in addition to his previous title as the teacher of awakening mind, as also the teacher of karma and its effects. And of course, he's most known for, again, distilling down the essence of all the teachings of the Buddha within the framework of the Lamrim and his text, The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. Again, organizes the entire body of the Buddha's teachings and again into the three scopes, the three capacities, initial, intermediate, and great. And then I wanted to read a homage that this book is Geshe Sopa's commentary on the Lamrim, which is really a beautiful book. But I was looking at it today, and the editor, who is David Patt, wrote an homage to Atisha that's just beautiful that I just wanted to read. It's really quite lovely. He writes, "Homage to Lord Atisha, who came to Tibet when the Dharma had disintegrated, when ethics had collapsed, when the lineage of ordination had been severed. Homage to Lord Atisha, who carried with him the living spirit of the living man, the sage of the Shakyas, whose feet touched the dust of this earth, whose body sat beneath a tree, whose vow awakened for this world wisdom deep as endless sky, luminous with love unhindered, warm and kind as morning sun of summer. Homage to Lord Atisha, who planted the flag of conquest in Tibet. Here the only will to turn will be the will of truth. Here the only law will be the naked reality of cause and effect. And all that grows and thrives and withers and dies will be seen to be all just the changing sad and beautiful face of real life, all like the moon reflected in a mountain pool. Here where good food is scarce but silence abounds like wind in the grass, the vision of the sage will rest a while, flower in the hearts of ageless children, brighten in the smiles of old monks, flow through wood-carved words inked on numberless pages, and grow unimaginably like crops that plant themselves, until another turning of the world scatters the pristine vessel of single-pointed mind and carries its indivisible contents, humble glimpses of emptiness, to new soil, new children, new smiles, new ageless words, until the wind changes again and again and again. Homage to Lord Atisha, may his dream never cease becoming true." Isn't that beautiful? So beautiful. So that gives you a real sense of what such a practitioner he was, and what impact he made on this entire world. So point 2, the greatness of the teaching. So the greatness of its allowing you to realize all the teachings are free of contradictions. So understanding that all within the three vehicles on what is to be discarded and realized in either the main path or one of its branches constitutes the methods for any individual to achieve Buddhahood, is realizing that all the teachings are free of contradictions. And so to think about why are the teachings free of contradictions, I think again it reflects on this gradual progression of the precepts. So when we start out, we're trying to tame our body and mind. And then when we progress, we're able to employ skillful means to help others within the context of the bodhisattva vows. And so, that may kind of trump some of the pratimoksha vows a little bit. But if we hold all that very tightly, then, it's not such a living, fluid tradition, I think. So kind of a simple example I was thinking about is, if we're going to talk to somebody about a worldly subject, in the pratimoksha vows, it could be considered idle talk, one of the 10 non-virtues. But if we have a bodhicitta motivation that we want to connect with somebody, want to share the Dharma with them, want to support and help them, then, we're not really breaking the pratimoksha vow because we have this, other motivation to help the person. So in that way, again, we keep coming back to motivation is the key. Motivation is the key. The second point, or 2.2, is the greatness of its allowing you to recognize all the scriptures as instruction for practice. By relying on the precious instructions, once you have ascertained the meaning of all the discourses and become skilled in which practices require analytic meditation and which require stabilizing meditation, you cease to reject the teaching and recognize the discourses as instructions. So again, if we didn't have the Lamrim and if we didn't know about the Lamrim and we read scriptures about the greatness of the body, so the basis of precious human life, and then we heard a teaching on the foulness of the body, then it would be like, wait a minute, this makes no sense, So when we hear teachings, if we know the Lamrim well, we know where to put it in, and then we can understand, what teaching is designed for, what kind of working with the mind, what kind of motivation, and how we want to understand deeply the Buddha's teachings. So it's really quite beautiful how that's done. (2.3) The greatness of its allowing you to easily discern the conqueror's main ideas. And again, this is just that the Lamrim extracts all the Buddha's teachings, all from the great treatises, and puts them into a system that we can grow into. Because just think about it. If we start with a teaching that we have no understanding about, no basis about, if that's what we heard first, I don't know, you might think it's too hard, I don't want to do this, I don't understand it. But if we go through the, first teachings and, keep going up, then it makes some sense to us. And we can progress then. And every instruction is made for practice. And the Lamrim is extremely comprehensive. What we've so far, what Venerable has taught so far, the easy path and then the Gomchen, pretty little. This commentary on the stages of the path, the Lamrim Chenmo, there are, 3 out? Aren't there 3 now? And there's 2 coming.
The 4th one's going to be out middle of January.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's so good.
Pre-order if we do it now.
Really? Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Meditation.
meditation, yeah. So 5 of these, and they're all big like this. So it's quite comprehensive. You could study this for, I don't know, what, many lifetimes? Yeah, many lifetimes, yeah. Yeah. And then 2.4, the greatness of it's allowing you to automatically avoid grave misdeeds. And for this one, pretty much what Venerable talk about this one is that this point has to do with criticizing the Buddha's teachings. And so, since the Lamrim extracts all the main points from all the great teachings, we study all the teachings of the Buddha, and we don't avoid sectarianism. So we don't get narrow and these are the good teachings, and I'm going to throw those ones out. And of course, when we're new to the Dharma, there's many teachings that may not resonate, or we don't have much of a connection with. And like what Venerable always says is, you don't throw it out or you don't criticize it. You just, put it on the back burner and you grow into these things, And so if you hear something and you have kind of a big reaction to it, just put it on the back burner, leave it for later. And then the third point, how to listen and to explain the teachings. So mostly tonight I'm just going to go in how to listen, not so much about explaining the teachings. So the 3.1, contemplating the benefits of hearing the teachings. So whoever hears the Lamrim will have their mind filled with faith. They will delight in spiritual practice and be stable in it. Their wisdom will grow and their ignorance will be dispelled. It would be worth buying even with your own flesh. So the faith we develop again in meditating on the Lamrim is not blind faith. It's faith based on understanding, on reasoning. Sometimes we could, instead of faith, we could say trust. We develop trust in it. And so, one of the best things about Buddhism is that we're always encouraged to think deeply about it, try it out, and see if it makes some sense to us. And so when we do the Lamrims, that's why we're always bringing them into our experience. How is it relating to my experience in this life? And it takes a while, I think, at least it did me, to kind of figure out how to do that. For quite a long time I would do them and they were kind of flat, I will say, but I think that time period was just getting used to them, getting kind of the framework of them. And then after a while, they start going in deeper. And of course too, sometimes, at least for me, I needed to purify a lot and create merit before, things would open and drop into my head, I tell you. So it's like it's bouncing off the skull, and flying away. So, and so, when we have this trust and confidence, then it really gives us a sense of stability. It's a path that we can rely upon. It's not going to fail us. Yeah, I mean, isn't that true? Is there any teaching that didn't work for you, or the ones that you understand and put into practice? Was there ever anything that you said, well, this isn't working? Really? I don't think so. And if there was something that wasn't working so well, it wasn't the teaching. It was me. And so, the path is very vast. So it takes a long time, so we settle in to continue to create the causes. And, we don't look about, what kind of progress am I making in a week, in a month, in 6 months, I only look at that every year. So to see what my progress is. And then the last line, where he says, their wisdom will grow and their ignorance will be dispelled. It would be worth buying even with your own flesh. that is a line taken from the Jataka Tales, and basically reminding us that the Dharma is more important than the body. You know, the body isn't going to lead me to enlightenment. The time of death, the only thing that's going to help is the Dharma. And in Geshe Sopa's book here, he has the full text of this, an explanation of why the Dharma is so precious and why the benefits of hearing the Dharma are priceless. And it's from the Garland of Birth Stories by Arya Shura. Those who listen develop faith, which becomes a stable enthusiasm for good. Wisdom dawns and ignorance is dispelled. Isn't this worth paying for even with your flesh? Listening is the lamp dispelling the darkness of ignorance, a supreme wealth that cannot be stolen by thieves and such, a weapon that overcomes the enemy of confusion, the best counselor teaching the proper method with personal instruction. It is a steadfast friend even in times of misfortune, a gentle medicine for grief's pain, the supreme army that defeats the forces of great misdeeds, and it is the greatest fame, glory, and treasure. When meeting noble people, it is the best gift. Amid assemblies, it pleases the wise. Engaging in the heart of practice is the result of listening. You will be freed from the fortress of rebirth with little difficulty. So again, pretty powerful, yeah. And I guess, you know, when I got this talk ready a little bit today, what dawned on me is that just by reading this and thinking about this, it infuses my energy, really. So, you know, there's a reason why this is put at first. You know, if you get a little discouraged or it gets a little dry or whatever, to come back to the power of this and, you know, what it actually provides, I think is really helpful. Really helpful. So, how to actually listen to the teachings? So there's two methods. Do people know what those are? One is relying on the six recognitions. The other, that one, I'll give you the hint, it has to do with the sick person. Yeah? Yeah. So we generate the recognitions that I am a sick person, the teacher is the doctor, the teachings are the medicine, and its steady application is the cure. And the Tathagas are as the superior beings, and that the teaching may remain forever. So, you know, these are spiritual remedies. Yeah. And so really, you know, it's, again, we're back to motivation. It's really good to have some commitment to put these teachings into practice, you know. And especially here we get so many teachings again and again and continual, you know. So sometimes with my mind I think, well, later on, you know, I'll study that or whatever. But if I would say instead, and sometimes I do, you know, I'm going to commit to practicing this at whatever level I can, whatever I got, I think that's a much stronger motivation and a much stronger way to work with all the teachings that we get. And then the second of how to actually listen is removing three faults similar to a vessel's. So, you know, to have a vessel overturned, so that's not listening to the Dharma, or the mind that's shut down when you do, nothing goes in. The second is that there's a hole in the bucket, and so it goes in, but you quickly forget it. And then the third is that the bucket is soiled, the vessel is soiled, so you listen, but for a worldly purpose, or you distort the meaning, or you try to find faults with the teacher. So we don't want to do any of those. And what Venerable said was, the kind of teaching you receive is due to the enthusiasm of the listeners. It's a very interactive process. So I was thinking, sometimes, not so much now, but before, if I would react to a teaching, to something that Venerable said with irritation, at that moment I am blocking the teaching. It is not even remotely coming in. And so, we're certain to have reactions. A good teacher is going to push our buttons. So I was wondering, how do you work with that? What are some ways that people here work with that when you're reactive or disturbed after you hear something?
Try to be aware that it's going on is the first thing.
Yeah. So recognize that that's what you're doing, yeah.
Try to figure out which button got pushed.
Yeah, try to figure out what button, yeah. Mm-hmm. What else? Anything else?
Think about what benefit it would be to get beyond being pushed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one I use is when I'm reactive or disturbed, I just immediately say, this is my mind, it's due to my mind. And that always seems to get a little space, this is my mind. It's nothing outside of me. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll skip over, gosh, the time went really quick. I don't think we'll do so much about how to explain the teachings. It's pretty straightforward what Venerable already taught on anyhow. I guess the important point is when you're teaching to give up on retaining information, bragging, weariness with teaching, criticizing others, procrastination and jealousy. But actually we could give those up every day anyhow, no matter what we're doing. Huh? And then the last of those points, 3C, the way to conclude common to both teacher and disciple. So again, comes back to we need to have a very strong determination to transform our minds, whether we're listening or teaching. And to just remember that only we know when we're doing real Dharma practice. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. It can look, quite skillful, quite beautiful, And but what your motivation is on the inside, it can turn into something very worldly, not at all Dharma practice. And so we have to keep refreshing our motivation. Why am I doing what am I doing? Why am I thinking what I'm thinking? What's going to be the result when I do that? And so, of course, before each teaching, we set our motivation. After each teaching, we dedicate the merit. And then point 4, how the disciples are guided by the actual teaching. So the first point, how to rely upon the spiritual masters, the root of the path. So again, we think of the spiritual teachers as the root. So they nourish and they stabilize, just like a tree, the roots of a tree. They nurture, they stabilize. Here's a quote from Geshe Potawa. He said, "In order to obtain liberation, there is nothing more important than the teacher. Although you may be able to do the activities of this life by watching others, without a teacher you will not do them well. How can someone who has just arrived from the bad migrations get to a place they have never seen without a teacher?" Pretty impossible. Huh? Yeah. Pretty impossible. And then the next point, the characteristics of the spiritual masters to be relied upon. And so I think in order to figure out who to rely upon, you need to know a little bit about the path. A little bit about the Buddhist worldview, I think. We need to rely upon those who have tamed the mount of their minds by training in ethical discipline. So we need to look at how they behave, not just when they're teaching, but in life. How are they behaving? And like every year, His Holiness says, when he talks about finding a teacher, look for about 10 years. That's what he says. Long time. Second, with the ropes of mindfulness and introspective awareness and concentration, have made it serviceable. So that they have some experience in meditation and concentration. Have some understanding of emptiness. Have studied. Have good qualities that surpass one's own. It's pretty helpful. Mm-hmm. Are proficient speakers with the skill to guide others progressively. Boy, that's important. I think especially in the West, because often we'll hear about something and we want to do that practice, and it's a high practice. And our kind teachers tell us, no, you're not ready for that. Yeah, you have to start here. And, without that, you'd start that high practice. You'd get lost, you'd get discouraged, it wouldn't work, So kind. They're so kind. Have loving natures as they are moved by compassion when they teach. Have joy and enthusiasm. And don't have any lassitude for teaching. And so what they say here, the bottom line is that when times are difficult or it's hard to find teachers, then at least they have more good qualities than bad ones. Then Venerable talked about some more things to think about, that they're more concerned with future lives than this one, care more about others than self. She said, whatever teachings we hear, we should put into practice. And so again, we're kind of going back to that thing, you hear teaching that it's like kind of hits you sideways or ugh. But, we need to put it into practice. We don't discard these things. And then this quote that she said, I just have a piece of it, I don't have all of it, but the sages do not wash away evil with water, they liberate by teachings. And that is very good for my mind to hear, because I am conditioned by a Christian society. And if I'm not paying attention, that's kind of where I can drop into. That's not helpful. The next point, the characteristics of the disciples who rely upon them. So I think the first thing is, even if we find a teacher who has all the required qualities, it's difficult sometimes to recognize those virtues for what they are because of the distortions of our minds. And so we should reject bias and be endowed with intense aspiration. And so to not be partial and prejudiced, because if we bring partiality and look at our teachers, then it masks positive qualities and we can get into judgment mind quite easily. Then having the intelligence to distinguish a spiritual path from one that is not. And that just takes some wisdom. That just takes some time. Paying close attention to the teaching when listening. So again, generating a strong interest in what you're hearing in the subject. And the next is how to rely upon them in thought. And so first, cultivating faith, the root. Or you can, if that word doesn't work for you, you can put trust in there. And so the text says, with great faith, focus on the Master's good qualities. Do not consider their faults even for an instant, for it will hinder your achievement of spiritual realizations. If through carelessness you regard their faults, confess it immediately. So this verse is saying that when looking for teachers, that's the time to look for their faults. Once you accept a teacher, then you don't look for faults. If you do that, you'll run yourself into a hole. And, when we pick faults and we look for faults in our teacher, we are not hurting the teacher, we're hurting us. We're hurting ourselves. I can remember very clearly after I first met Venerable Chödrön, and not too long into going to teachings, and she gave a particular teaching that really pushed a lot of my buttons, and my mind just, it's like, why are you saying that? And I just started in. And as I was driving home, I said, if I keep doing this, I'm going to ruin this. I'm going to ruin it. So I have to make the decision, stop now or quit doing this. And I think that's some of the best advice I ever gave myself, because I quit doing it. And I don't have that hindrance at all anymore. I don't have critical thoughts about Venerable Chödrön. And I think it's because I made I made myself pick either step away, because I knew if I kept doing that, it would just get miserable, it would just get miserable. So I said, no more. Venerable also said in this part, she said, we have no right to become attached to our teacher. They are teachers for the entire universe. Easy to read, hard to do. Yeah. Then she said, arrogance is such a big obstacle. Or it can be stubbornness, this mind that says, you can give me advice, but I'm not going to take it. So we really have to look at that. Because it's just hurting ourselves. It's not hurting the teacher. Also, a good student is willing to take hits to the ego. If not, the teacher will be very sweet, but we won't grow. If you would have told me that early on, nah. I mean, it's taken many years to open to Venerable's hits to my ego. It's taken quite a long time. Is that true for other people? Did anybody have that easy? Karuna.
You're speaking in past tense there.
Oh. Well, yeah, maybe I shouldn't. Yeah, just wait. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. But again, I'm just going to say it again. I think when I made the decision, I am not going to criticize her or any of her teachings. It all comes from my mind, period. End of story. That really helped. It really helped. The next point is having recalled their kindness, developing veneration. That word doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I guess I would say I develop respect and see what is so precious in front of me. A teacher will stay with you until you become awakened. They will never abandon you. And if you think about this life, or any other lives we have ever had, every other being has abandoned us in one way or another, even if it was the final one of death. A teacher will stay by our side until we are enlightened. And that's what brings respect and such preciousness then into the mind. It's like, I can't even talk about how beautiful that is.
The word that Venerable used when she was teaching us was gratitude.
Oh, gratitude, yeah. That's too little for me. It's bigger than that. Yeah, I mean, it saves your life, really. It saves your life. I mean, who in our life is going to call us on the carpet when we're doing something that is hurting ourselves? Who does that? Hardly anybody, as adults. You do?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now you're my teacher. Thank you. You are my teacher. Thank you. She also said, and again, I didn't write down where all this came from, if it was the Array of Stock Sutra or something else. But she said, think, I didn't have the fortune to be born at the Buddha's time, but my teacher is teaching me like the Buddha would. They look for me who has roamed in cyclic existence for a long time. They awakened me from a long time of ignorance. They pull me out of the sea of cyclic existence. They showed good paths to me who have gone down bad ones. They lead us on the path. They are a doctor to me who is tormented by the afflictions. They relieve us from the fire of attachment. These are my spiritual friends, thoroughly teaching the Dharma, the qualities of all phenomena, the Bodhisattva path. With these in mind, I have come here. These are the kind of people who will benefit me. These are the kind of people who will benefit me. That also reminds me, when I first came to live here, and my mind was such a mess, mostly what I was saying to myself every day was, there are no enemies here. I said that a bazillion times. There are no enemies here. Over and over and over again, I had to tell myself that so that I could see the help that was offered instead of seeing it as harm, which is what I was seeing it as. They are like doctors releasing us from birth and death. They are like mountains, stable. They have minds as undisturbed as the tranquility sea. With this in mind, this is how I come here. They don't have favorites and leave others out. And so we have to check our motivation again, back to motivation. What am I expecting from a teacher? What am I expecting from a teacher? Not special treatment, but to lead me on the path. And oftentimes that's quite painful. But out in the world without any of this, how painful was that? So much more painful.
Without a good cause.
And without a good cause, yeah. So totally just worldly, yeah. As they save the world, they are like heroes. With thoughts like these, honor your spiritual friends. So these verses help us to adjust our mind and relate to our teachers in a healthy way. And then the next point, how to rely upon them indeed. So we align our mind with virtue. We offer really our life to them. We dedicate our life to Dharma practice. We offer our family up because we're most attached to them. We give up attachment. We can offer all of these things to the Buddha. We can make material offerings, especially things the teacher needs. Teacher has very many projects, they can't do them all, so with really such a joyous heart to be able to help, And again, here we get so busy and, this project comes, that one comes, that one comes, that one comes. And I really have to guard my mind to how am I going to bring that in? Yes, thank you. I want to do that. Or, oh my gosh, not another thing, So we really have to watch how we meet what's coming at us, how we engage in what's here. And and for so many reasons, if I think that it's a burden, then I'm now in misery, aren't I? I'm in misery. And I'm doing that to myself. And so one of the things I work with that is that I don't really put a timeline on it. I try to take it in with an open heart, and I get to it when I can, and I trust that that will be good enough, because that's the best I can do. And even if people get, critical of that or whatever, that's not mine. That's not mine, because I'm doing the very best I can, So we offer our practice to our teacher. We practice according to their instructions. Sometimes our teacher will tell us to do things we don't want to do, and I make myself do it, and it's always helpful. The way to be close to our teacher means to practice well. The drawbacks of not relying on them. Lama Tsongkhapa says, once you have taken someone as your spiritual guide and have received teachings from her, it is dangerous to relate to her in the wrong way. If you develop a negative attitude towards your teacher, get angry, or speak and act disrespectfully, you will produce a bad relationship. The negative karma you create can become very powerful and heavy. So we really want to guard ourselves from that. And then the last point is a summary of the above. In brief, if you sincerely wish to practice the teaching for a long time, rely upon masters who guide you infallibly. Understand the benefits and the drawbacks at the time, and value your commitment to the gurus more than you do your life. Venerable said we need a teacher because the teachers are so subtle. Otherwise, we will end up exactly where we are, with no progress. So everything that we learn through these graded stages of the Lamrim are things that need to be applied to our everyday life. If we separate our spiritual practice from our daily life, we will not achieve these goals, our goals. We will not transform our minds. So I was just going to ask people, what are the methods, what are the ways that you integrate these stages of the Lamrim? How do you integrate these things into your daily life? What are some examples, maybe? How would you make those two connected? Is that a process that's something that you set out to do, or do you just keep doing the practices and then kind of see some changes come? Or is that making sense? Are you seeing what I'm getting at?
I don't think I understand the question.
So if we do these meditations over and over and over again, and that's our practice, how is that going to inform our actions when we're off the cushion? There's the question. Yeah.
It's quite different for different topics, but I find that just in the break time, trying to remember to bring whatever topic I've been meditating
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something like about the afflictions or such, then you want to be mindful of that in your everyday actions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you're thinking about emptiness, you have to think about it in a different way and try to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
see things as empty. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. How about other folks? Yeah.
Me, the way I think about it, I don't really try so much, a lot of times the things I'm studying to think about them while I'm doing other things, because I'm focused on what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I more try to keep some level of mindfulness and introspective awareness around me, so that how I'm doing things is what I'm paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And then other times I actually build into the day certain times where I think about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But not, while I'm working and if my mind has to concentrate on a task, I don't try to contemplate do two things at once. It's more like how I'm going about it,
Mm-hmm.
so that I stay aware of.
How you enter
That's
into
what
it.
I try to,
How you enter into it.
how I'm being it.
How you're
How I'm
being
being
it.
it.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, like, which I don't always succeed at what I want to be, but to me it's like, you know, when you're with others, you watch your speech and what you're doing with your body. When you're with yourself, you watch your mind. It's kind of like that. It's like trying to be aware of what I'm doing with my body and my speech when I'm around others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Venerable Samten?
Heather has written 2 comments.
Uh-huh.
First of all, it says, I think it's really easy right now to carry the meditations on the suffering of samsara into our daily life, seeing what is going on in the world and allowing it to fuel renunciation and refuge. Also to practice seeing the dependent arising of things as we go throughout our day and notice objects and people, seeing death and impermanence as we see animals on the side of the road, or see flowers wilting and remembering that our own life is fleeting.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy says, doing the meditations regularly, it becomes so much a part of my awareness, so they come easily to mind in different situations throughout the day. Another person by the name of C says, familiarization helps points to arise in the mind when I need them in daily life. Being in the SAFE program helps because things are fresh in the mind and having reminders I carry with me on my phone are all to stay in Dharma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I think when I'm interacting with the news, it's just so clear that, you know, if there's any doubt in my mind that this is samsara, then the doubt is gone, and just to see precious human life.
For me, I kind of take it day by day when I wake up in the morning, what kind of mind I have, because every day my mind is different. And I kind of set my motivation, my path, kind of based on what my mind is of that day. If I wake up and I have a grumpy mind, then I'm very cautious and try to bring a lot of compassion to myself. Or if I'm feeling overloaded with too many tasks, I'll consciously let myself take some off my plate, you know. I mean, so I kind of clear things away so that I can bring some balance. You know, one of the things I tell myself a lot is any time that my peace of mind is disturbed, there's an affliction in my mind, so I want to calm, I want to even myself out again. And, you know, on days when my mind is really afflicted, that's pretty much what I do that day, you know, which is fine. So for me, I kind of start with what the mind flavor is each day, and then know kind of which practices are going to be best for me. Or sometimes I don't know, and I'll try this, doesn't work. Then I try another, doesn't then that one works. So I just keep, putting something in there to see what's going to turn it. Any other comments? I'm at the end of the stuff here. So maybe we'll stop. Thank you.